There are days that begin with a cold wind and end with something the heart never expected. That morning, the late autumn breeze swept through Emily Carter's light brown hair as she stepped off the last bus, clutching her worn canvas bag tightly. Before her Everstone estate rose like another world. Massive, imposing its white stone columns gleaming coldly, the lawns trimmed so perfectly, not a single leaf dared fall out of place. Emily swallowed hard. This wasn't just her first housekeeping job. This was her only chance to earn enough money to pay for her mother's hospital bills at the state clinic and to keep the tiny apartment she and her younger brother lived in. She had folded and unfolded the job offer letter so many times the paper was already crumpled. Don't mess anything up. Don't talk too much. Don't even breathe too loudly, she repeated to herself, like a mantra. The front door opened slightly. An older woman with neatly tied silver hair stood waiting. Mrs. Agnes, the head housekeeper, gave Emily a sharp once-over before nodding curtly. On time, come in. The marble floor was cold beneath her shoes. Enormous abstract paintings hung along the walls. No family photographs, no music, no smell of food. Only the ticking of a clock and the sterile white light pouring down from the vaulted ceiling. Read the handbook carefully. Remember the rules. Especially this, no entering the second floor after 9 p.m. No personal questions about the master. Don't look directly at him. Don't talk much. And if possible, don't breathe loudly. Mrs. Agnes's voice was dry as stone. Emily gave a nervous smile. No one returned it. Her first assignment was the morning routine in the sitting room. Dust. The mirrors replaced the flowers, checked the circular robot vacuum that was rolling silently across the floor. Someone had stuck a pair of cartoon eyes onto it, making it look like a clumsy pet. Emily smiled when it bumped against her ankle and beeped in protest. "Sorry, Sir Robot," she whispered gently, lifting it over the rug so it wouldn't get stuck. At precisely 10 o'clock, the air inside the mansion changed. Every staff member seemed to snap into place as if on cue, straightening uniforms, adjusting posture. The master was home. Emily was handed a tray with mineral water and a thin slice of lemon, told to stand beside the marble column in the great hall, the safe spot. She repeated silently, "Don't shake, don't spill, don't look directly." The sound of footsteps echoed across the marble floor. A tall man stepped through the main door wearing a charcoal overcoat and a deep navy tie. Every movement seemed staged as though the world itself adjusted to his presence. Lucas Everstone, the reclusive billionaire rumored to be as cold as the marble he walked on. His eyes never left the phone in his hand. At his side, the assistant murmured like a radio. 11 o'clock board meeting, 12:30 call with Tokyo, 2 o'clock interview with the new CFO. When the assistant stopped, Mrs. Agnes gave a small nod. Emily stepped forward, balancing the tray in both hands. "Sir, your water." But just then the clumsy robot came bumbling over again, nudging her foot as if in play. Emily, startled, stepped back, and her heel caught on the edge of the rug. In that instant, the lemon slice seemed to fall in slow motion, then splash. The entire glass tipped, spilling over Lucas Everstone's polished black shoes. The hall froze. No one breathed. Emily nearly dropped to her knees, fumbling for a cloth, her hands trembling violently. I'm so sorry. I'll pay for cleaning or buy you a new pair." "No, I can't afford that, but I can polish them or scrub them for 5-10 minutes. Anything." Lucas looked at her, not with anger, not with contempt, but as though studying a puzzle piece that didn't belong, yet was somehow intriguing. "Stand up." His voice was deep, steady, not loud, but it jolted her upright as though by electricity. Her cheeks burned red. I apologize again, but at least your shoes are moisturized now. Dry leather cracks easily." The assistant nearly choked. Mrs. Agnes cleared her throat, perhaps hiding a smile. From the kitchen came the sound of a dropped spoon. Lucas glanced at his wet shoes, at the damp cloth in her hands, then at her slender fingers. The hands of someone who had worked far more than she had spoken. "Name?" "Emily Carter. First day." "Yes, sir. Today is my first. Reason you took the job." Emily swallowed hard. She could lie, but she didn't. "To pay my mother's hospital bills, and the rent for my brother." Lucas studied her for another moment, then gave a small nod. "No need to replace the shoes, and next time don't make things up." "I wasn't making it up." I wasn't talking about hospital bills, I meant moisturizing leather. The corner of his mouth lifted, just barely like a comma breaking through the silence of a symphony. Then he walked away into the boardroom, his shoes still wet, but the floor drying with every step he left behind. Emily exhaled shakily, clutching the cloth. She bent to pick up the lemon slice near the robot, whispering, "Don't mess with me again, okay?" The robot beeped once and rolled away. In the staff break room, Emily tucked a small flower into an empty paper cup, a tiny spot of color in the mansion's endless gray. She texted her brother, "I'm okay, not fired. I'll cook noodles tonight." The reply came quickly, seen. Emily smiled, just a small one, but real. And on the first page of the rulebook, beneath the strict printed lines, she secretly scribbled in pencil, "Rule no, 0, never let anyone feel invisible." Perhaps even a mansion could warm up if it began with something that small. Her second morning at Everstone Estate began with the distant rumble of thunder, a warning of the coming afternoon storm. But inside the gleaming kitchen, bright and sterile like a laboratory, it wasn't the weather that made Emily's hands tremble. Mrs. Agnes entered with eyes sharp as a blade and gave a curt order. "Marcus has to take his child to the doctor. Today you'll reheat the soup for Mr. Everstone's lunch." Emily nearly dropped the spoon into the sink. I only know how to cook instant noodles." "Just don't burn it," the housekeeper replied, and disappeared through the swinging door. "Sextau, ende ben om dik torso." Emily took a deep breath and faced the massive stove, bigger than her entire kitchen at home. A copper pot already sat there filled with vegetable soup cooked earlier that morning. She lit the flame, lowered it just as instructed, and tried to distract herself by wiping the counters. But her eyes kept darting to the clock. She wanted the soup warm, not boiling, not scorched. That was the plan. Reality had other ideas. The smell hit her first. Sharp, acrid, unmistakable. "Oh no! No, 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 no!" Emily rushed over, yanked off the pot, and twisted the flame out. Steam exploded upward in a thick, choking cloud, like a forest suddenly ablaze. She coughed violently, flinging open a window and waving the lid around in a panic. And then, those footsteps, familiar, unhurried, measured, impossible to mistake. Lucas Everstone. "Dead. I'm dead," Emily whispered, hair tumbling in disarray, smoke swirling like some kind of exorcism ritual. The door opened. Lucas stood there, no tie, one hand in his pockets, eyes narrowing as he took in the rolling fog. "Are you burning a forest?" His voice dropped lower than the smoke itself. Emily let out a nervous laugh. "Ah, no, sir. This is, a new therapy. Steam soup inhalation, the hot vapor, cleanses the lungs. Very beneficial. A modern health trend." Silence, heavy, lingering. The assistant beside him almost coughed to stifle a laugh. And Lucas stood still. 1 beat, 2, then he laughed. Not the polite smirk seen in financial magazines. A real laugh, deep warm spilling out until he had to cover his mouth. Emily froze. When he finally caught his breath, his eyes gleamed faintly. "Soup steam therapy? I should note that down and report it to the company's medical director." Emily blushed crimson, but her tongue betrayed her again. "If you like, I could develop another version. Chicken broth therapy, helps digestion, boosts vitality." This time, even the assistant chuckled out loud. Lucas shook his head, lifting a hand in surrender. "That's enough, Carter. You didn't just burn the soup. You've incinerated my schedule." Still, he quietly poured himself a glass of water, and instead of leaving, he sat down at the small corner table. His eyes flicked to the pot, still bubbling faintly with a smoky tang. Without looking at her, he asked, "When was the last time you cooked yourself lunch?" Emily blinked, surprised. "Last week, egg noodles for my brother. I burned the pot, too." She gave a sheepish smile, but he still ate it. He said, "If it's made by you, even burnt food smells good." Lucas said nothing, but when he left the kitchen, it wasn't with irritation. He simply took out a container from the fridge, just a cold chicken salad and apple slices, not his favorite meal, clearly. Yet he ate it quietly without complaint. From time to time, his gaze flicked toward the girl, by the stove, hair-tousled cheeks, flushed shirt, faintly scented of smoke. Minutes later, he rose and left, but his shoulders seemed lighter, his steps not as heavy. A little while later, Mrs. Agnes returned, holding a slice of peanut butter toast. She placed it in Emily's hand. "You should eat. You burned enough calories with your soup therapy." Emily sank onto a wooden chair, clutching the toast. Above, a faint haze of smoke still lingered around the vent, the ghost of her failure. Yet something else stirred inside her. This little burn. Maybe it proves I've left a mark. That afternoon, Everstone Estate felt slightly different, not because of the smoke that still clung faintly to the hallways, but because of something the staff hadn't heard in years. A laugh. From the man they had all called the Stone Wall, and the one who made it happen wasn't a millionaire partner, nor a speech at a boardroom podium. It was a clumsy maid hair in a mess, cheek-stained red, and words so honest they couldn't be scripted. That night, Everstone Estate glowed brighter than usual. Warm, golden light spilled from the grand hall onto the marble steps where luxury cars slowly rolled away from the evening banquet. Inside lingered the scents of fine wine and expensive perfume, the usual fragrance of polite toasts and calculating handshakes. From the end of the corridor, Emily quietly carried a glass tray collecting half-empty wine goblets. She kept to the shadows an observer rather than a guest, but it was impossible not to see who stood at the center of it all. Lucas Everstone, in a perfectly tailored black tuxedo, hair swept back neatly, eyes sharp and unreadable. Surrounded by businessmen, he stood immovable, each word carefully measured, each expression controlled. But Emily somehow noticed more than the others. His smile never reached his eyes. When the last car finally departed, silence returned to the grand hall. Staff moved in to clean up. Emily bent to pick up a fallen napkin when footsteps echoed from the staircase. She looked up and nearly dropped her tray. Lucas was stumbling down the stairs, his tie-loosened shirt collar unbuttoned, a half-finished glass of wine dangling precariously in his hand. His cheeks carried a faint flush, his eyes unfocused, dreamy. Emily rushed over, panicked. "Mr. Everstone. Are you all right, sir?" Lucas leaned against the wall, nodding vaguely. "I'm fine, just good wine." He staggered down the steps and collapsed onto a sofa, his body slack as if he'd lost all control. The wine glass tipped, spilling onto his trousers, but he didn't even flinch. Head tilted back, eyes closed. Emily's heart raced. She set the tray aside, hands shaking. "This is bad. Drinking like this is dangerous. I need to do something. Honey water. A cold towel." She darted into the kitchen. Minutes later, she returned with a cup of warm honey water and a cool washcloth. Lucas hadn't moved, still asleep in his drunken haze. Gently, Emily propped his shoulder and placed the cup in his hand. "Try to drink a little, sir. I read online, honey is good for the liver, it helps with alcohol. And if that's wrong, then, well, at least it's a gesture." Lucas shook his head, faintly sloshing the liquid over the rim. Emily bit her lip, set the cup aside, and wrung out the cloth. Carefully, she pressed it against his forehead. "This will do for now. Rest, I'll watch over you. Don't worry." She sat in the chair opposite, fingers entwined tightly to keep herself awake. And then, as she had done so many nights caring for her sick mother, she softly hummed a lullaby. Her voice wasn't beautiful, not even steady, but it carried something warmer, gentler, truer than any perfect note. "Sleep tight now. The night is kind. Stars will guard your dreams tonight." She sang quietly, almost like a prayer to herself. Lucas remained motionless. Yet after a while, his breathing slowed, his body relaxed, and on his face, usually stern distant, there was relief. Emily smiled faintly, though the chill of the room made her shiver. She glanced around for a blanket, but found none. Hesitating only a moment, she slipped off her own thin jacket and draped it over him. It was all she had to give. "Good night, Mr. Everstone," she whispered. She stayed in the chair, chin propped in her hand, watching over him. Eventually, her own eyelids grew heavy. She drifted off, still seated there like a silent guard over a lonely fortress. Lucas opened his eyes near dawn. The room was hushed still. The jacket across his body still held a trace of warmth. On the table, the honey water had cooled. Opposite him, Emily slept, her head bowed, hair falling across her face, her expression calm, in a rare moment of peace. He said nothing. Slowly, he lifted the jacket, folded it neatly, and stood. But before leaving, he turned once more as though to memorize the sight. When Emily startled awake, sunlight was already streaming in. Her jacket rested neatly on the arm of the chair. The cup was gone. Lucas was nowhere to be seen. Mrs. Agnes entered, setting down a tray of tea. She gave a rare knowing smile. "He said you handled an unexpected situation very efficiently." "That's a compliment, Miss Carter." Emily blinked, then blushed. Efficient. She left the room with her heart light as wings. Not because of the praise, but because of the look Lucas had given her last night. Not cold, not distant, but human. What she didn't know was that Lucas Everstone, the man famed for being unshakable, unyielding, had not been drunk at all. He had only pretended, to test whether a clumsy maid was truly as genuine as she appeared. And what he received in return wasn't flattery, wasn't pretense, but a lullaby, a thin jacket, and unconditional kindness. That morning, the sky was strangely overcast, as if even the clouds couldn't decide whether to stay or drift away. Emily began her day wiping down the ground floor corridors as assigned by Mrs. Agnes. Everything inside Everstone Estate gleamed as though time itself had been frozen in a mold of perfection. She carefully polished every corner of the staircase, sliding her cloth along the walnut banister, glossy from endless coats of polish. Then, crash. A loud thud echoed from the reading room at the end of the hall. Without thinking, Emily dropped the mop and ran toward the sound. The door was ajar. She pushed it open. Books and files lay scattered across the floor, toppled from a tall shelf. Lucas was kneeling, one hand braced against the ground, the other clutching his left shoulder. A heavy wooden plank had struck him as he reached for a stack of folders on the higher shelf. "Mr. Everstone." Emily gasped, hurrying to him. He turned his face away, his voice rough. "I'm fine. I can handle it." But Emily had already seen it. Through the torn seam of his white shirt across his shoulder ran a jagged scar ripped open and bleeding anew. Her breath caught. Blood seeped through the fabric, not a deep wound, but dangerous if left untreated. "You need to bandage this," she said, her voice steadier than she expected. "I'll call someone." "No." His tone was clipped. "It's an old injury. I'm used to it." Emily met his eyes firm. Being used to pain doesn't mean you have to keep bleeding. Without waiting for permission, she dashed out and returned within a minute, arms full. A first aid kit, a clean towel, antiseptic, and gauze. Lucas hadn't moved. His gaze lowered, his mouth tight. But he no longer stopped her. Emily knelt beside him, carefully pulling the torn fabric aside. The scar was not just a cut. It was a memory carved into skin. Old but brutal, like a relic of violence. As the antiseptic touched him, Lucas flinched. Her voice softened. "It'll sting, but I'll be quick." Her hands were gentle, deliberate. Each movement firm, yet respectful, as though she were mending something far more important than the flesh. Lucas exhaled, looking away. "When I was a boy," he said, suddenly voice gravelly, "I was hurt by glass. My father threw a bottle against the wall, but it hit me instead." Emily froze but stayed silent. "I was only 8, bleeding. No one came to bandage me. I wrapped an old shirt around it myself and sat in a corner until morning." The air thickened heavy as stone. Only the faint whisper of wind through the window filled the silence. "You know," he muttered, "that's when I learned to deal with everything alone. No one comes when you need them." Emily paused, then lifted her gaze, meeting his. "Maybe, but today, you're not alone." He turned his head, his silver gray eyes locked on hers. Not cold, not hard, but like a child who had never truly been cared for. "You should change your shirt," she whispered once the bandage was set. "I'll wash this one if you'd like." He gave the faintest nod. "Thank you." Emily rose, gathering the scattered papers across the floor. As she bent to pick one up, she noticed a file spotted with blood. She blew gently across it, wiping it clean. Lucas's eyes followed, and he muttered quietly, "Strange. Some stains of blood are easier to look at than the things people try to hide in those files." Emily smiled softly. "Some wounds need to be seen, just to remind us that the person carrying them is still alive." In that moment, between the dim light and the faint antiseptic scent, Lucas realized this girl wasn't just scrubbing floors. She was dusting off the memories he had buried. That night, when everyone had retreated to their rooms, Lucas sat alone in the reading room, a fresh shirt hiding his wound. But his hand drifted unconsciously to the bandaged shoulder. It didn't hurt much, but it felt different, as though the scar wasn't something he had to bear alone anymore. On the desk, Emily had left a small folded note. In delicate handwriting, it read, "I don't need to know where the scar came from. I only need to know this from now on. You don't have to bandage it alone." Lucas folded the note carefully and tucked it into a private drawer. And in that quiet moment, he realized the deepest wound he carried wasn't on his skin, and for the first time it had begun to heal. Saturday morning, Everstone Estate was as quiet as ever, the only sound the faint sweep of a broom across the stone steps. Emily was folding clean tablecloths into the storage chest when an unusual sound made her pause. A truck, not the usual kind that delivered fine wines or transferred files. This was a small old gray truck parked discreetly by the side gate, a place few people ever used. From it, several workers in plain uniforms unloaded boxes labeled Hope Haven Children's Home. Emily's heartbeat slowed, then quickened. She edged closer, pretending to dust the wall nearby, eyes fixed on the cargo. The writing on the boxes was clear: warm blankets, infant formula, children's shoes, school supplies. A kitchen worker helping with the unloading whispered to another. Same as every month. At the end of each month, Mr. Everstone secretly sends a shipment like this. Emily frowned. Same as, what do you mean? The older man hesitated. Well, I shouldn't say, but Mr. Lucas orders all of this himself. No names, no publicity, no credit. Just one instruction on time and discreet. Emily stepped back as though she'd just glimpsed a piece of a portrait she'd never seen before. A hidden corner of Lucas Everstone's seemingly cold and flawless exterior. That afternoon, while Emily was arranging fresh flowers in the sitting room, Mrs. Agnes suddenly told her to get into the car. We have somewhere to go. The gray SUV slipped away from the estate, winding down dirt roads toward the outskirts. Past crumbling storefronts and leaning houses, they finally stopped before an old iron gate. The rusted sign read, Hope Haven Children's Home. The moment they stepped out, children swarmed around like little birds. They cheered at the sight of Mrs. Agnes. One boy clung to her leg, proudly announcing, Look, I got new shoes. A girl grabbed Emily's hand, pointing toward the yard where kids were sharing cookies. Today we got chocolate ones, I ate 2 already. Emily stood still, breath caught in her throat. The boxes she had seen that morning had transformed into laughter smiles, small hands warming inside new mittens. She turned to Mrs. Agnes. Mr. Everstone, did he do all this? The older woman nodded slowly. Every month, no one knows, no pictures allowed, no recognition wanted. A silver-haired woman with kind eyes came to greet them. Agnes, it's been too long since you visited. Emily, this is Mrs. Helen, the director here. Agnes introduced. Emily bowed politely. Mrs. Helen smiled and led her on a short tour. Lucas was once one of these children. Not here for long, though. After his mother passed and his father died in an accident, he was sent to a larger facility. But he would come back here in the years after quietly, painting fences, fixing toys, helping with repairs. Never wanted anyone to know. Emily's chest tightened. The truths Lucas never shared, absent from newspapers, absent from boardroom conversations, now revealed themselves through the laughter of children. A curly-haired girl handed Emily a crayon, drawing a house with a red roof, children playing out front, and a tall man standing at the doorway. Miss, this is my dream, the child said softly. To have a home. And Mr. Lucas there with us. Emily nearly broke into tears. She remembered Lucas the night before, sitting alone in the empty boardroom, just a glass of untouched wine and golden light around him. He had sent hundreds of boxes, thousands of gifts, but he had never once stepped inside that home, never once sat with the children, because he didn't believe he belonged in warmth like that. On the ride back, Emily sat in silence, clutching the child's drawing close. That evening, after finishing her work, she returned to the ground floor and placed a small lavender-colored flower pot outside Lucas's office. Underneath, she tucked a handwritten note. Sometimes a home needs no grand introduction, just colors, laughter, and someone waiting for you to return. The next morning, the note was gone, but the flower pot had been placed on a shelf in Lucas's office by the window. No words were exchanged, but Emily knew. He had read it, and he had kept it. That night, Lucas stood by the window, looking at the small flower. His hand brushed gently against its delicate petals. Outside, the wind swept through the trees, but inside him, for the first time in years, the emptiness wasn't as heavy. Children were laughing in their new shoes, and one clumsy girl had seen through his armor and didn't run away. Maybe he still had a chance to belong somewhere. Rain hammered down on Sunday evening. Not the gentle drizzle the suburbs usually knew, but a true storm. Sheets of water falling like a curtain, winds howling through every branch, thunder cracking like fireworks across the sky. Even Everstone Estate solid on its hilltop seemed small and fragile in the tempest. Emily was folding towels in the laundry room when the lights went out. The mansion instantly plunged into a suffocating blackness. She froze, the thunder outside, the violent rain lashing against the windows. It all dragged her back to a memory she had locked away for years, a childhood night when she was only 8. That night, her mother had suffered a breathing attack and was rushed to the hospital. The neighbor asked to watch over Emily and her little brother accidentally locked her in an old shed. No light, no answer to her pounding fists. Only the moldy smell of wood and the faint trickle of rain through a gap in the roof. That was the night she huddled in darkness, trembling, certain she had been forgotten. That terror had never left her. And now, as Everstone Estate went dark, it returned whole, suffocating, merciless. Emily stumbled into a corner, gripping the low cabinet heart, pounding like war drums. She tried to breathe, but her throat tightened, chest squeezed, air refusing to come. From the halls came the hurried voices of staff, searching for flashlights, calling the electrician. But Emily remained frozen, voiceless, trapped inside her fear. The same thought looped over and over. Don't let me be left behind. Don't let me be left alone. Then, a small glow appeared at the doorway. Lucas stepped in carrying a candle. Its flickering light cast soft gold across his face and revealed the panic in Emily's eyes. He stopped immediately. Carter. She blinked rapidly as though convincing herself this was the present, not the nightmare. She staggered up, voice trembling. I'm sorry. I don't do well in the dark. Her tone was barely a thread breaking apart. She fought against tears, but they brimmed anyway. When I was little, I was locked in alone, in the dark. During a storm, I thought no one would ever come. Lucas stood still. The flame quivered in his hand. Then, he sat down on the cold tile floor beside her. Just two shadows facing each other in fragile light, his voice lower than usual. I know that feeling. Emily looked up, startled. I grew up in an orphanage, he said. The first night there, a storm hit. The window wouldn't shut. Wind screamed through every crack. I pulled the blanket over my head, but I still heard the rain, like it was piercing through me. He paused, eyes distant, and I thought, if I disappeared that night, no one would notice. Emily's throat tightened. She had no words. Instead, she reached out, barely touching his hand. But you didn't disappear. The candlelight caught in his eyes, damp, softer than she had ever seen. Because I learned not to expect anyone to come, he said quietly. Maybe, Emily whispered, but sometimes what we need most isn't light. It's someone willing to step into the dark with us. A thunderclap boomed, making her flinch. Instinctively, she squeezed his hand. Lucas glanced down, then did something no one in that mansion had ever witnessed. He closed his hand over hers. Not too tightly, not too long, but enough. Enough for Emily to feel anchored amid the storm. You don't have to be alone anymore, he said, his voice raw in the heavy dark. They sat like that for minutes. No words. Only their shadows stretching across the floor like two faint beams of light belonging to people who had walked in darkness too long. Then the lights flicked back on. The glare dissolved the intimacy of the moment. Lucas rose, blowing out the candle. All right, let's go. He extended his hand. Emily hesitated, then placed hers in his. He didn't let go until she was steady on her feet. Thank you, she murmured. Lucas met her gaze gentler now. Sometimes, he said softly, the only thing a person needs is someone who doesn't leave when it's dark. That night, Emily lay awake in her room, not because of the storm, but because something inside her had shifted. And Lucas sat alone in his office, the small lavender flower she'd given him resting on the desk. He brushed a finger over its petals. Maybe it's time to let in a sliver of light, even if only through one fingertip. Outside, the storm quieted. The winds eased. But inside, two people who had trembled in darkness. A candle had been lit, and it had not gone out. It was an evening Emily knew she would never forget. Lucas Everstone's birthday, one of the most powerful men in the world of investment, was nothing like the glittering galas or press-crowded parties one might expect. There was no champagne fountain, no guest list filled with celebrities. Just a long table set simply in a side hall of Everstone Estate with roast chicken, pumpkin soup, garlic bread, sprout salad, and a modest round cake. The The staff each offered carefully chosen gifts: a vintage fountain pen from Mrs. Agnes, a bottle of aged wine from Chef Marcus, a pocket watch from the driver Thomas. Elegant, tasteful, restrained. Each one designed not to embarrass their master. Then came Emily's turn. She rose, hands trembling as she clutched a small parcel wrapped in old newspaper. Every eye in the room turned to her. She drew a breath. I have a gift too, but please don't laugh. I don't have anything of value, but I draw. Lucas took the package and peeled away the newspaper, heads tilted. Inside was a sheet of colored paper drawn in wax crayon, a clumsy picture yet bursting with color. A house with a red roof, its door open wide. Children laughing in the yard. A flowering tree by the porch. A tall man stood in the doorway, serious perhaps, but with a smile on his face. And above it all, written in crooked letters of colored pencil, a home doesn't need to be big, only warm. The room fell silent. A few chuckled. Someone muttered, "So childish." Emily blurted out nervously, "If you don't like it, I can redo it. I'll add a garage, a pool, maybe change the door to something fancier." The laughter grew, but not mocking. It was the kind of laughter that came when someone was so guileless, so disarmingly honest, that no one could help but smile. Lucas said nothing. Then he looked up and smiled. Not the polite, controlled smile of a businessman. A real smile, gentle, quiet, reaching his eyes. "No need to change anything," he said. "This is the most special gift I've ever received." The room erupted. Applause, cheerful banter, warmth filling the air. Emily sat down again, her cheeks burning, yet inside she felt light as air. The next day, rumors exploded. No one knew who had taken it, but a photo appeared on a financial forum. Lucas Everstone, the man who never showed personal emotion, smiling, holding a childish crayon drawing given to him by a maid. The caption read, "The maid who cracked the stone wall." The story spread like wildfire. Articles popped up everywhere. The mystery woman in Lucas Everstone's life. Romance between billionaire and housemaid. From mop to millionaire's heart. A modern fairy tale. The internet split in two. Some mocked her, sneering that she was climbing too high, playing the poor but sweet card. Others swooned, calling her the Cinderella of the 21st century. The girl who made a man of steel finally smile. Emily hadn't expected this. She had only wanted to give a gift from the heart. A clumsy drawing, but honest. Now her phone buzzed non-stop. Old friends messaged. Strangers asked for information. Some praised her. Others accused her of acting. Even inside Everstone Estate, things shifted. Some kitchen staff eyed her differently. A few showed sympathy. Some showed envy. Others pulled away, suddenly distant. Emily cleaned the dining hall more carefully, eyes lowered further. She walked the corridors as though she herself had become the whispers she could hear. That night, Lucas entered the living room and found the drawing already framed and hung on the wall. Not in the center, but in plain view for anyone passing by. He asked Mrs. Agnes, "Did she put it there?" "No," the woman replied, "I did. Because I thought, if a house could make you smile, it deserves a place on the wall." Lucas said nothing, but he stood before it for a long time. That night, Emily sat curled up under her blanket, scrolling through hundreds of comments beneath the photo. She deleted an old picture of herself with her brother from last year. Her hands hovered, then scrolled further down the comments. One anonymous account wrote, "A girl like her probably knows how to act. Rich men are always fooled by fake innocence." Emily locked her phone and clutched the blanket tighter. She felt dirty, not because of what she'd done, but because the gaze of the world had tainted something she thought was pure. She thought of Lucas, of the things he never said, the subtle gestures, the quiet way he watched. She didn't know what she was to him, a stranger, a different maid, or someone who actually meant something. She didn't dare ask. She didn't dare hope. The next morning, as she passed his office, she glimpsed Lucas on a video call. Charts and investment plans filled the screen. Yet his eyes, for just a second, flicked toward the framed drawing on the wall. Only for a moment. But in that look, Emily saw no shame, no denial. What she saw was pride. And for the first time, hope slipped in, like sunlight through a crack in the door. Maybe, just maybe, he wasn't ashamed of the picture. He was proud of it, because it was real, and the girl who drew it was real. The rumors didn't just spread. They ignited like fire. After the photo of Lucas Everstone smiling at a maid's crayon drawing hit the internet, Everstone Estate became the subject of endless chatter, in media columns and private investment circles, even in gossip forums hungry for scandal. Emily was just an ordinary girl, but through a single blurred photo, she was thrust onto a stage she had never chosen, beneath blinding spotlights with whispers circling and ears everywhere she couldn't shut out. At Windsor Hall, a prestigious investment conference, Lucas was slated as the keynote speaker. Emily came along with the staff assigned to arrange flowers and handle serving trays. She moved quietly through the marble-floored hall, where men and women in tailored suits glided by, with phones pressed to their ears and champagne glasses in hand. Their words were jargon-heavy, but their glances at her were clear, half amusement, half pity, as if she were some character lifted from an online novel. In a corner, she spotted a group of financial journalists whispering. One raised a phone, and on the screen she glimpsed that photo again. Lucas with her childish drawing captioned, "Love across the divide, has Lucas Everstone, chosen heart over power." Emily lowered her head and hurried on. She thought she could drift unnoticed through the evening like a shadow among chandeliers. But fate always knew its moment. As she adjusted a vase on the side table, a sharp female voice cut in from behind. "Well, well, so you are real." Emily turned. Standing before her was Helena Voss, CEO of a rival investment group, infamous not just for brilliance, but for her lethal tongue. At first I thought that picture was some cheap PR stunt. Helena's smile was cool cutting, but it turns out you really are the girl who made Lucas Everstone smile in public. Emily bit her lip. "I'm just an employee." "Exactly," Helena interrupted, stepping closer. "And you'd do well to stay in that place. Don't mistake a man's courtesy for affection. In our world, a pretty little maid is nothing more than a passing flavor." She turned away, her voice drifting back like silk over steel. "Lucas is a smart man. Don't embarrass him." Around them no one spoke, but their eyes said everything. Emily stood frozen, her face burning, her heart thudding, not from flattery, but from the humiliation wrapped in velvet. And then, from the far end of the hall, Lucas entered. He strode forward, his gaze sweeping the room, and stopped where she stood, silent before Helena. "Helena!" His voice cut across the golden hall, not loud but sharp as a scalpel. She turned with a faint smirk. "Lucas, just a little friendly conversation." He walked up, standing squarely between them. His tone didn't rise, but each word landed like iron. "I don't make a habit of befriending people who insult my staff." Helena's brows arched. Really, I was merely reminding her that our world has rules, and someone like her should know her place. Lucas's jaw tightened, his eyes flashing like a hidden blade. "Emily Carter doesn't have a place." She walks beside me. His pause was deliberate, his next words striking like thunder in the gilded hall. "And anyone who insults her, insults me." The room fell into dead silence. Emily froze. She had longed to deny the rumors, but in one breath he had confirmed them, before the entire international investment community. Helena tilted her head, her smile unchanging, but her eyes darkening. "Brave of you, Lucas. But careful. Feelings are the quickest way to ruin a career." "Then let it ruin me," he said, "because I've been silent for too long." On the ride back, the black SUV glided smoothly through New York's dazzling night streets. Inside, though the silence was heavy as steel, Emily sat in the back, her hands knotted tightly in her lap. "You shouldn't have done that," she whispered. "I had to," Lucas replied, eyes fixed on the window. "The press will say you lost control. Shareholders will question you. Partners will—" He turned to her. "You think I care more about them than about you?" Emily's breath caught. She had no answer. "Carter," he continued, his voice dropping, weary but more honest than she had ever heard it. "I used to think silence was the safest way. Work hard, keep everyone out, and no one could hurt me." His eyes held hers unguarded. "But then you walked in, with your unfiltered words, with your burnt soup, with your silly drawing. And for the first time in years, I realized the silence in this house was unbearable." Emily trembled, tears welled, but she forced a smile. "Was that your version of a love confession?" Lucas chuckled softly. "If that's what you call it, then yes. To be clear, I care about you, deeply." The SUV stopped before the estate gates. Emily stepped out, then turned back, looking at him through the frame of the door. "Then you should know one thing." Lucas tilted his head. "I have nothing to lose, But if you truly think I matter enough to stand beside you, then I won't back away." And for the first time, she walked into Everstone Estate without lowering her head. Lucas remained in the car, gripping the wheel eyes, following her. She was no longer just a maid in his sight. She was the first person brave enough to step into his life and choose to stay. Mornings at Everstone Estate no longer felt cold. Gone was the suffocating silence. In its place were new sounds: dishes clinking lightly in the kitchen, the faint music of a piano drifting through the hall, and the laughter of children as they ran down the corridors in their tiny socks. Emily Carter was no longer just the clumsy maid. She had become part of the estate itself, not because of her title, but because her very presence had changed everything. The gray walls seemed less severe. The vast empty rooms no longer echoed as they once had. And Lucas Everstone, the man who once treated emotions as a burden, now stepped out of his office more often, sometimes leaning against the doorway to admire a flower, sometimes asking Marcus about cookie recipes for children. Their being together was no longer a matter of gossip. The media had doubted at first, but then a photograph spread Lucas Everstone, dressed in a simple gray sweater, gently pushing a swing for a little girl from Hope Haven, while Emily stood beside him, smiling tenderly. The image so ordinary set the internet ablaze. And slowly, the criticism faded. Investors were stunned to see Lucas, once known for no off hours, appearing at charity events, bowing to hand out books, smiling with an ease that was entirely unguarded. It all began with a small West Wing room, once used for storage. Emily had spoken up with the innocence of a child. "Have you ever thought we could turn that empty room into a free reading space for the neighborhood kids? Just a few tables, some comic books, some paintings on the walls." Lucas frowned. "This is a private home. Then just open it one afternoon a week. Whoever wants to come can come. I'll plant flowers by the window. Marcus can bake cookies." Lucas said nothing. 2 days later, construction crews arrived. 4 weeks after that, the Everstone Community Reading Room opened. Children poured in, scattering books across the floor, their small voices reading aloud, filling the space. Emily painted a tree on the wall. Marcus pretended to be the book-eating monster. And Lucas stood at the door, hands in his pockets. Eyes softened as he watched the pages flutter beneath the afternoon sun. One spring day they visited Hope Haven together, the orphanage where Lucas had spent his lonely early years. But this time, Lucas didn't stand outside. He walked through the gates not as a donor, but as a father figure. He crouched down to fix a bookshelf, knelt to tie the ribbon on a curly-haired girl's dress, smiled as Emily read fairy tales in a voice filled with expression. A photojournalist captured the moment. The caption went viral. "The man who once fled from feelings now stands in the middle of them, unwilling to leave." 1 year later, Everstone Estate was no longer a fortress. It had become a home. On Lucas's birthday, the mansion opened its doors to orphans and struggling families for a picnic. No extravagant gowns, no wine, only sandwiches, picnic blankets, acoustic music, and a house filled with laughter. In the living room, Emily's crayon drawing was reframed in a larger frame, placed in the very center. Untouchable, irreplaceable. Beneath it, newly engraved in gold, were the words, "A home needs no luxury, only light." That evening, Lucas and Emily sat together on the front steps. The night air was gentle-scented faintly with jasmine lanterns overhead twinkling like stars. Lucas took her hand, his voice low. "When you first came, I thought you were a disruption." Emily laughed softly. "And now I know," he said, eyes steady on hers. "You're the reason I began again." She leaned her head against his shoulder. This house finally knows what a human heart feels like. From what was once a fortress of silence and scars, Everstone Estate had become something new. Not a symbol of wealth, but of renewal. A man once abandoned, a girl once forgotten. 2 people who found each other and built a home. A place that finally understood love. One crisp late autumn morning, in the back garden of Everstone Estate, where the old swing was now adorned with lavender garlands, Lucas Everstone knelt before Emily. In his hand was not a diamond that blazed with extravagance, but a simple silver band engraved with the words, "Where silence ends, we begin." Emily laughed through her tears, nodding, before he could even speak the proposal aloud. 3 months later, their wedding took place quietly in the spring garden. A place once symbolic of loneliness, now transformed into a sanctuary of renewal. Children from Hope Haven scattered handmade paper flowers along the aisle. Marcus baked a 3-tier wedding cake with an old family recipe, and Mrs. Agnes, once the strictest voice in the house, held Emily's hand as she walked her down the path. Emily's mother, after long treatment, had finally regained her health and moved to live near the estate. Each morning, she tended the garden, sometimes baking cookies with Marcus for the children. Her younger brother, the boy who had once been Emily's reason for working herself to exhaustion, was now in college, supported by a scholarship from the Everstone Carter Foundation. He often teased her, calling her the savior without a cape, just doodles. And the mansion, once known as a place without laughter, had become a home, not perfect, but enough. Because sometimes to mend a heart, you don't need a miracle. You just need someone willing to come close and stay.